I'm Ashley Cusack. I'm here with Greg Herskowitz from Herskowitz Shapiro. They are a real estate transaction and commercial litigation firm. He does a lot of our closings. He's super helpful and always gets the transaction through. So I just thought today would be nice to interview him and kind of see what's going on, Greg, how you're seeing changes in this market, how you guys are handling them. So just, kind of bring us up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ashley. No, really, obviously, we're all dealing with COVID-19, and it's new to everybody. What I am seeing, just generally speaking, is less transactions, purchase and sale transactions. However, I'm still definitely getting contracts to me, maybe down 50% of what it was. But, we're getting them with financing. We're getting them cash. And things are still moving along. So that's a good sign. It's a healthy market. I still think the fact that we had a very healthy market before we got into this has really helped us. So while I have less contracts, more refinances, certainly we're still getting them, and the prices haven't been reduced at this point, really. Mm-hmm. So that's good.
We've seen that too.
Yeah. In terms of how things have changed, obviously we're working, my office, we still have it open, regular hours that we had before. I have staff going in, but we're cautious in terms of how many people are going in, because I have 10 people in my office. So maybe we might have 4 go in. They're all wearing masks, being very cautious. And we're also working remotely and, quite frankly, doing closings, just in different ways.
Right. And so are you can you do them virtually, or are people still having to come in and sign, I imagine, for some?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that we've been handling it. So one is we can do it what's called online notarization. There are these online notaries, which, interestingly enough, the Florida title underwriters really didn't allow this until COVID-19. Oh. Now that we have COVID-19, they've loosened the guidelines for now, they said. It's only temporary. So we are trying to set these up. The problem is that these online notary companies are, when I say online notarization, it's not me being online with a borrower. We have to go through an actual certified online notary company. Uh-huh. And there's a few out there, Pravasso, Notary Cam, and a few others, but they're so inundated with requests that you have to schedule these far, far in advance. To give you an example, I did one actually from a really nice older couple who were in Venezuela, who had to sign seller documents, and we were able to use Notary Cam. And so we were able to get them, I was on the call as well and witnessed and notarized, and we were allowed to use those for the closing.
How far in advance did you have to set that up?
Sometimes, a week or 2 in advance. You got to pick the time. Then at the last minute, they might need to move the time because other closings took longer than expected. There is also a technology aspect to it. So if somebody's not so tech savvy on the other end, it's difficult because you got to have audio and video. You've got to, the most important thing is you have to be able to verify them. There's a credit verification, and then there's the knowledge-based verification. So it's very formal. They want to avoid any chances of there being fraud, et cetera. So we have to be very careful. But the other ways I've done it is we provide mobile notaries that wear masks and gloves and deal with social distancing. We'll meet with the buyers, for example, in their patio. I have Zoomed in and gone over the loan documents, or if I get them in advance, I'll email them to the buyers. We'll go over them on the phone, and then the notary will just meet with them to sign. I've also done it where I've sent them, we've gone over them on a call the night before, and then they drive up to my building, literally stay in their car or come out and sit at an outside table. I watch them sign, they give me the documents, and they're gone. So I've done it with kids in the car. I mean, we adapt, and that's what you have to do, and it's still getting done quite efficiently.
I love that. I mean, I think that's our businesses anyway. You have to be so flexible because they're, timing and everything, but this is just showing, a way that you can do it, and that the transaction's still happening. And what about, do you think some of these things that you're doing now might stay, or do you think, the way we were doing it was better, or,
Well, I mean, like I don't think we'll end up having like a drive-through like a McDonald's Burger King. Oh, that'd be nice, right? You get a cup of coffee and a closing at the same time. But I think that some of it will. It just depends really on the lenders and the underwriters. Not all lenders are on board with the online notarization.
Right.
So it's really got to be approved by both our title underwriters, right, who underwrite the actual title policy, but also the lenders. And so some of it depends on what kind of normal we get back to. I don't know what that's going to, I think in the very near future from now over the next maybe 6 months to a year, I think this will remain, even when things loosen up, people will come to our office, but I think we'll still be able to do some other things. I don't know the long term, that's yet to be seen.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into, we had before talked about jumbo loans and how you're seeing them converted more to first and second loans, and talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so I mean, a jumbo loan is you have the conforming loan, which I should know the exact amount, but I think it's about $470,000 or $80,000.
Maybe just over 500, I think, maybe. I don't know.
Whatever it changed to, but if you're going to buy a house and get a loan greater than the conforming amount, then essentially what happens is the banks have tightened up, the lenders have tightened up on these jumbo loans. So a lot of, they're really not there in the capital markets right now. So what's happening is some deals are not able to go through, but what's happening is they're converting to a first and a second, or they call piggyback, where you get the first loan as a conforming amount, and then the second loan is almost like a line of credit. And so you have two packages, you close those, and that we've been successful at. And there you have to go to the right lender. Very important. It's always been important to go to the right lender before all this, but it's even, to me, so much more significant. Some of the bigger box lenders are sometimes a little bit difficult to deal with in this market right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like what you just said, that it's always kind of been, it's always been that way, and it's important which lender you choose, but I think now more than ever, really.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing we're dealing with is everyone is passing around these COVID-19 addendums, which I know we talked about, Ashley. And essentially, for the people who don't know what that is different real estate brokerages have different forms. And, I've tried to collect, I have all of them, and I've also drafted my own, really for depending on what situation we're in. But what it's trying to protect the buyer from is if you need an extension, for example, normally force majeure, which is a basis for extending the closing or even allowing the buyer to cancel at some point, where there, for example, a casualty or a hurricane or something like that, and you all of a sudden can't get insurance because there's a hurricane approaching. Once that force majeure event is over, you have a certain period of time to get the closing done. If you can't by a certain time, then either party can cancel the contract. Well, the problem is that COVID-19 pandemics were not included in that definition of force majeure. So now there are these addendums coming out to almost redefine force majeure, including COVID-19 and pandemic, to protect the buyer. So these are all negotiable, and they're things that you really should have attorneys looking at to go over it to benefit, and look after the buyer and the seller. But one of the other things that needs to be looked at is when you get to the loan approval period in a contract. So at some point when the buyer has to either provide notice that the loan's been approved or cancel the contract. And the buyer gets loan approval from their lender and gives notice to the seller. Between that date and the closing date, typically, you just move along and you go and you close. And there's very few other reasons ways the buyer could get out of the contract.
Right.
But now we're dealing with reality in the situation. The verification of employment right before closing that the lenders are doing, making sure either the buyers are still employed or their salary hasn't been reduced or their jobs haven't been furloughed, those issues are now sometimes coming up. So you want to, the buyers are trying to put language in an addendum to protect the buyers in case that happens after notice of loan approval has been given. And the sellers want to limit that, because they
right.
want some certainty after the loan approval period. So these are all things we are dealing with. All the real estate attorneys in this community know, that these are at the forefront, and we're having to deal with these issues.
And I always think it's so important to have an attorney that you're working with. I love, like, when we work with Greg, it's a great opportunity to kind of talk to you about, like, what's, what we need in this. And but it's funny because the addendums that we've seen, a lot of them have just been so heavy for the buyer and not protecting the seller. But it's, it's a perfect situation where an attorney like Greg can help you, like, cover both people. So it's a more balanced and fair.
Well, and that's a fair point. And by the way, some of these things you also, I think every deal is different. You have to look at it very fact specific, because, for example, if your occupation is one that you're not concerned that you're going to be affected that much, right? Government employees, school teachers, even people who have their own law firms or businesses, or call it a financial advisor. Some of these people might not be as affected because they won't get furloughed, and they're not worried about getting terminated. So you might not worry so much as a buyer about having that contingency in there. But sellers also should have people looking after them, because, for example, if you live in a condo, well, what if the building isn't going to let you move out because they don't want people in and out? So you want to be able to extend that closing until this period is over where everyone's quarantined. So I think the sellers also have to look at it and think about what their concerns might be.
Right. It makes sense. I mean, it's new for everybody. So I think that's another reason for an attorney to review anything you're signing right now.
Absolutely. Agreed.
All right. Well, I think that was great information, Greg. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. And why don't you give everybody your number and how you best reached?
Well, listen, for all the people that work with me, including Ashley and her whole group and everyone else, my cell phone is always accessible to people. So I have no problem. If you want to shoot me an email, it's greg@hslawfl.com. My cell phone, 305-322-0253. My office is in South Miami, Pinecrest area. So we're always accessible. And so if you need anything, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you, Ashley. Have a great day.
Right. Thanks, you too.